the councils. The council. I'm wondering whether it's still up there. There's quite an interesting bit on the council website about Sichester garages.
Yeah.
Pitching it in this really upbeat way. Because essentially, where that development was Sichester garages. Most people would have known it essentially as the bit where they kept the Portobello van hire cars and vans.
Yeah.
Because they were all kept in that, I don't know if it was always called Lockton Street, it's now called Lockton Street, so they were kept under those arches. And so you had Shalfleet Drive, which comes straight out of the station. And they knocked down some of the council housing on the left-hand side of Shalfleet Drive, and they built, as you know, rather oddly around Princeton House, which was later going to come back and slightly haunt them. I have no idea what was going through their minds when they decided to do that, because they definitely thought at first, when they first came to redevelop the rest of the Sichester estate, the plans were to bring down Princeton Tower.
Right, yeah.
So obviously the minute anyone actually did any kind of technical work, and we couldn't believe that was in the we couldn't believe that was part of the plans. I can't get us to stay on there. Yeah. We couldn't believe that anyone was planning to do that anyway. That was the Sichester Garages was a pilot scheme for the development, I think definitely of our estate and possibly of all the estates.
Yeah.
Because they took what was one terrace of council housing and some garages, which were expendable. I don't quite know where they decanted the people out of Shalfleet Drive while it was being built, but that would be, from a social point of view, quite an important question to ask. And they built some of this mixed tenure housing that they're so keen on. I don't know if you know why, but there's something called the neighbourhood effect. And there is a guy I actually sat on a platform with at the Labour Party conference last week called Paul Watt, who's done a 9-minute video called The Neighbourhood Effect, which explains the idea. But basically, council estates obviously full of feckless skivers. If you redevelop, move in some aspirational, high-flying, ski holiday taking Daily Mail readers, the feckless skivers will all suddenly become inspired, change their ways, and become useful members of the community. As we know, that's not true from any point of view, because on the one hand, I mean, I've delivered leaflets to every property on this estate multiple times. Most people here have jobs, and most people who don't have jobs are retired. So it's not as though people on council estates aren't working anyway. But anyway, the neighbourhood effect will explain why they're so keen on this. And they've built, so Peabody, you'd have to examine the deal in some detail. It's all around the internet, but Peabody was more or less given Sichester Garages, and I think given the responsibility for some of the council tenants, and they built these high 6-storey, 6 to 10 stories is apparently acceptable, but over 10 becomes a tower block, which is fine for rich people but not for poor people. Riddle me that. So they built them round an enclosed garden. which is another of their obsessions. They somehow think that by building these tiny enclosed gardens, we're all going to suddenly turn into the people who live up on the squares on Ladbroke Hill. However, of course, what's actually happened, from all accounts, is that the new tenants blame the social tenants for all their ills. Essentially, there are too many people in a small space there.
Yeah.
The enclosed garden, I was in it last November at midday. There was no light anywhere in the garden. They've essentially, you know that weird wind effect you get around tower blocks?
Yeah.
You know, go up to Trellick Tower, and well, a lot of that is caused by the fact that tower blocks were deliberately built with space around them, because you needed, this people who were living in the sky needed space to breathe, the building needed space to breathe.
Yeah.
Well, what they do is they infill all around the tower blocks, and it creates these crazed wind tunnels. And if you stand in the garden in, whatever they're calling that now, Sichester, what do they call it?
I think it's just, as far as I can, like on the architect's website, it's just called the Sichester.
Oh, it's called More West
project. Yeah, it might be called More West. Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, it's called More West. You got this wind howling through. You've got the fact that whoever built it was fucking incompetent. You know, the drainage is impossible in that garden, partly because it's getting no sun and it's only getting this kind of what do you call that, super wind?
Howling
that
wind.
Jet stream that kind of goes about 50 feet above the ground. And what you don't have is any air to breathe. The other thing, sorry, it's not one of my special subjects, this is slightly tumbling out. They missold everything on that estate. For instance, the private tenants were not told that no one on a new build gets a parking space. No one on a new build gets a parking permit. You know, the much vaunted RBKC permits, which take you all the way to Peter Jones. No one was told that. Everyone was told. They built the resident rooms for the entire estate in there, but no one was told that that would be a gated community. So we, the residents of the Sichester estate, can't actually get to our residence rooms unless we go with someone who lives in Prinstead House.
Right, so they're basically just for the people in...
Well, no, I'm not sure that the private people can use the resident room. It's a meeting room for... for resident association meetings. It was supposedly, it's yet another thing that they TMO/council wanted to privatise, because whereas we had a residence room which was kind of open access, they now wanted to turn it into a place that you could rent for your kids' birthday party, christening party, or whatever. So you've got what you've got there is you've got no sun. You've got a gated community who basically hate the guts of each other. You have got, partly because it's a gated community with these inviting steps, you've got all the bad kids coming up and causing trouble. Though, of course, some of the troublemakers are some of the kids who actually live there. So what you've got is you've got this kind of unattributable social nuisance which everyone blames everyone else for. You've got people who were told they're getting parking permits who aren't. You've got people... you just got a lot of people complaining, basically. And then they were going to use that as the basis for what they're going to do to us. The other thing, in the building of it, there were endless problems because the demarcation lines between what was the council's problem and what was Peabody's problem was not set properly in the first place. So all these, and they had a contractor called Mace who were fucking awful. And so you've got all these problems, and in the same way that, I don't know how much you know about Grenfell, but the TMO and RBKC were arm's length, which meant that a lot of problems could just fall in the gap between them. Anyone who's been complaining about anything down there has just had nowhere to direct their complaints because it falls between these two stools. Furthermore, if you read, I'll send it to you later, that Vice piece, everybody around here loves Bugsy's. You know, we shared the convenience store with the Lancaster West. Bugsy gives credit. You know, if you've got benefit sanctions or you just, some problem and you can't pay till next week, Bugsy gives credit. They built that thing to have a flagship supermarket opposite Bugsy's. Like, I think they wanted it to be a Waitrose. They now, if we're lucky, we'll get some kind of cost cutter. Which is a direct challenge to Bugsy's, which is kind of the heart of the community in many ways. But they're so fucking inept that they didn't run any electricity to the flagship retail unit. So it was kind of Halloween last year, they had to dig the garden up again to lay the electricity into the shop. That was quite a big platform actually. Now fighting to save our estate, do you want people who can't remember to run the electricity to a fucking shop to be building £100 million redevelopment? No is the answer. There are also they built it on loads of springs because there are loads of springs. What used to be Chelsea Creek actually bubbles up on Little Wormwood Scrubs, and that's what the railway line down to Imperial Wharf and West Brompton actually runs on top of what used to be the river. Right. But there are loads of springs around here feeding into that, and they built a lot of that on top of springs. So since they built it, they've got a waterlogged garden, and also they've kind of forced water across, so they've had a lot of trouble with their lifts being flooded. So there you go. Wow. The person you really need to speak to, she may not be very pleased with me because I was so dismissive of her wasting my time on Sunday, is a woman called Nahid Ashby. Nahid is currently the acting chair of the Sichester RA. Right. And she lives on about the 16th floor of Princeton, and she has pictorial evidence of all of it.
I think I met her. She's a very attractive lady.
No, she's short and quite fierce looking. She's been here like 38, 39 years, 40 years. Amazing view from her flat.
Because I looked up online about the project, and one of the things that that's in the statement about it is that there was this sort of element of community engagement, and they said how the project was chosen, or the winning design was chosen through a process of community engagement. How much do you know about that?
I don't really know much about it. To be honest, I was quite happy being a dilettante DJ till, well, I suppose I began to get a bit roused up about the Westway Trust plans, and then when they came for the whole estate, I got very involved. Yeah. To the point, about this time last year, it was taking up most of my daytime. Right. Yeah. I mean, that's. Mm-hmm. If I wasn't a DJ and had a day job, I don't know whether we could have done as well, because we was driven by two of us, and the other lady had a terrible, terrible car crash last year, and she's still more or less in a coma. So that was a blow, but then it kind of fell to me, because one of the things about this community engagement consultation is that it's incredibly slanted and skewed. So the questions, there's a top-down plan, and then they have to tick various boxes in order to push forward with the plan. But everything is very much skewed to get the answers that they want. So on Sichester, we started to get into this semantic thing about participation versus consultation.
Right, yeah.
Participation essentially being that grassroots are engaged at the vision point, really, rather than to say, well, I say yes or no, but the idea is that they say yes to the plan. And we've really pushed that semantic difference over and over again. And in fact, funnily enough, James Murray, who's Sadiq's housing guy, came to see us talk last week.
Yeah.
And he did tell me that he was going to pick up on that participation versus consultation. Because the whole the consultation process, whether you're as cynical as I am about it, or less cynical about it, it's driving towards approving a plan.
Yeah.
It's not engaging the local knowledge of the community, the needs and the wants of the community in formulating the plan.
Yeah.
So,
do you think that's something that is happening now with the broader regeneration sort of scheme? Because it is at an early stage.
Well, funnily enough, I was slightly involved in that whole move to get the Labour Party conference. I'm not a Labour Party member, but after Grenfell, I kind of somehow ended up hanging out with Unite quite a lot. And I was part of the group that was pushing towards that thing of getting ballots as compulsory during ballots of local residents. It's compulsory during regeneration proposals, and Jerry Corbyn announced that as part of his speech last week. I mean, if you look at Simon, already they're rowing back on that. This isn't going to. This doesn't apply to Labour. Even though it's Labour Party policy, it doesn't apply to Labour Party councils until the Labour Party is in power. Right. So, in the 195 council estates that are threatened by Labour councils, that's according to Simon Elmer, though Paul Watt would say it's 140. So, I mean, we're talking about way over 100. It doesn't apply to any of them.
Yeah.
So it doesn't apply to the Haringey development vehicle. It doesn't apply to what Southwark are doing to the Aylesbury. It doesn't apply to any of these fucking things.
Yeah.
So there's lip service being paid to it. Yes, I would agree. But you'd be hard pushed to say it was becoming policy. I suppose lip service is the first step. I mean, the problem is that, the way I see it, is that we're slightly dependent on selling homes off plan abroad as a source of hard currency. Because if a Russian billionaire spends 20 million pounds on a house, assuming he's buying it from off plan, that's 20 million pounds that comes in, which is the same as Nissan putting 20 million quid into the Sunderland factory.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think is underestimated is how much our balance of trade deficit needs this off-plan sales in London to keep the pound fucking afloat. Which I think is one of the reasons why anyone who becomes mayor falls in cahoots with the developers immediately.
Yeah. But
I tell you what I could show you here. I've got here, for instance, are two I probably can't. I might be able to scan them. Hold on. This is my careful filing. Somewhere here I've got, for instance, two. Here we go. These are two plans. This is for West Ken and Gibbs Green. Oh, sorry, Nick. That is. These are two people's plans. One for Cressingham Gardens, and one for. That one was partly done by Ash.
Right.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I walked around without any socks on for the first 2 hours. I think I've got a cold for it, which is not ideal. So that is what a people's plan looks like. That's a bottom-up plan that's come from Simon Elmer or whoever.
Right.
Geraldine Denning, probably.
Cool. So these are stuff that's been started. Are these started? Were these initiated by the residents here, or by Ash? Or?
I would imagine it's kind of by the residents. I mean, Ash make it clear that they're keen to do this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And all the one good thing about the internet is that all these protest groups are linked.
Yeah.
So, when we started our protesting against our regen, first of all we had Ed Daffon from Grenfell Tower, the Grenfell Action Group.
Yeah.
Who's an old mate of mine. So he came to help. He brought people like the Radical Housing Network, people from Earls Court, West Ken, Gibbs Green came up. There's a great a guy called Tony Bird who used to be an independent tenant and leaseholder advisor, which who's the person who comes in and is employed actually by the council to help residents address regeneration.
Yeah.
There's a whole industry now in these ITLAs. I've also probably got here, have I? Here we go. This is what an ITLA. This is another company called PPCR who are an ITLA working with us on the Sichester region.
And what does ITLA stand for?
Independent Tenant and Leaseholder Advisor.
Right.
It probably say, what does it say here somewhere? What they does it say what they're supposed to be, what their mission is? No, they'd been with us long enough by the time this came out. They didn't have to say who they were, but depending on your point of view, they're either people who, they're people to advise the residents. I mean, we very much felt that they were here to manage our expectations.
Right.
But in theory, they are here to help. Tony Bird is, he's a kind of here to help kind of guy. He's retired, so he was unable to apply for our job.
Yeah, maybe that amounts to the same thing, managing expectations and helping.
Yeah, because obviously they're not allowed to coordinate your opposition.
Yeah. Does I was wondering because it says so. It says that there was an on-site liaison officer during the entirety of that project. I don't know if you know anything about that or if that was the case.
No, I mean I have to say I was kind of a bit still stuck up my own arse when when the Sichester garages were done. Yeah. And hardly kind of noticed it. Yeah. Just saw there was building going on. It's got a bit of plop art on it, as you probably know, the Nat Coley Bramley thing. Yeah. Which, it's nice that there is a nod to Frestonia in it. Though it's very different, obviously, from after Frestonia,
Yeah.
they won their fight and they were able to create their own housing cooperative and build. You can actually see them if you go down Bramley Road. You get to that grounds of Arabica coffee shop on the right hand side,
Right.
and then just after that you see there's a kind of triangle opposite you, and that's all those houses are where the Frestonia people got moved to, Bramley Housing Cooperative.
Oh, okay.
It's the 40th anniversary of Frestonia when the squatters declared independence.
Yeah.
The 40th anniversary, the end of this month.
That's really interesting that it's a nod to that, I suppose, whilst also being something quite different
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah.
Um,
He wrote quite a right-on explanation of it when he put it up.
yeah. Does I've just got some questions so I don't forget. What do you think of the design, just like from an aesthetic point of view?
I hate it. I mean, I'm not a big fan of that kind of slightly different coloured patchwork of bricks look, which seems to be very much the look at the moment.
Yeah, it's called New London Vernacular.
Is it?
Is the
Fuck.
lingo?
Well, it really is. I mean, it's kind of gentrification vernacular.
Yeah.
That's the thing. The minute you see that, I now see the people who've been moved out rather than a lovely new building.
Yeah.
It's obviously exacerbated by the fact that the architectural conceit is the thing that is causing part of the problem.
Yeah. Do you think because in that particular project there was, because it was built mainly on garages, there weren't really any people moved out, and those that were offered.
I think there were, yeah,
places in the new building.
So it would be interesting to know, whether there are any leaseholders.
Yeah.
There, and what happened to the leaseholders, because essentially if they'd knocked this down, they'd have had to offer me something similar, but it would have cost twice as much, would have been probably slightly smaller, and would have so I'd have owned half of it and the council would have owned half of it. That's assuming I could transfer my mortgage to it as a 58-year-old man. I wouldn't have got a garden, so leaseholders are the ones who are left with either having to move, beyond Harleston, or staying, just owning a fraction of what they had before.
Yeah.
And the other thing, of course, is a lot of people are in temporary accommodation. I met people who've been in temporary accommodation for 11 years.
Yeah.
So as long as they don't knock it down, it's pretty permanent temporary accommodation. But the minute they knock it down, you then go to the back of the list because you don't have the same rights that a secure tenant has.
Right. Okay.
So.
So I suppose.
So it would be interesting to know whether that's actually true.
Yeah. I guess it's also the kind of like association of that sort of architectural look with what it calls to mind in terms of.
Well, gentrification / social cleansing.
Yeah.
I mean, I quite like the word gentrific cleansing because there is something slightly offensive about the word social cleansing because we know from Bosnia or whatever what that can actually mean.
Yeah.
But it's difficult to find another word for it.
Yeah. So here's a question. Do you think that the building of that will help the community? Do you think that the input of whoever the new tenants are will be of benefit to the community?
No, I really don't. I really don't. If they put that shop in, it'll put Bugsy's out of business. We can't get into our resident rooms. That's now a gated area, so it's got a sense of we're in, you're out, which doesn't really fit with my sense of community.
And there aren't other gardens like that within the estate, are they generally?
Well, I mean, what we have, So here, for instance, this is when we did the Open Gardens Estate. Here you can see. Here you can see Sichester. Where's the tube station? What's A? That's Road Station. So there's the printed. So slightly weird. There's kind of nothing there where we are. But this is what the council want. Is Wainfleet Square. That's a huge open area, available to all. Kids' playground in it.
Yeah.
We got loads of green space around the back here. You know that if you were to, a lot of people walk down there. They haven't quite put that in the right place, have they? That's the railway, is it? Yeah. I live here. That's Bramley House. Yeah, the station's actually there, not there. A lot of people, walk to their jobs in Latimer Road through that really nice grassy bit up there. There's lots of lovely little gardens in here, actually.
And these are all open
to
everybody?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
I mean, these gardens here in Lancaster West are fantastic.
Yeah. Right. So I suppose you'd say that it's like a different kind of...
Yeah, I can't see a single advantage to it myself. And I don't really feel I've met any people from that new bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they use the pig and whistle. I don't think...
Yeah. I don't know if they've all moved in yet.
They haven't all moved in, but a lot of people have moved in now. The other thing, of course, is Peabody. There's the problem of the housing associations, which are basically some of the big developers now. It's the same thing seems to happen in any of these organisations. Is they get to a certain point, a certain size, and self-preservation seems to become their motivation. So you've got the Westway Trust, which also, though it has to be said, Grenfell Tower slightly put a stop to it. They were on the point of becoming kind of property developers and all about leveraging their estate and, how they could make the most money out of it. Sure, they give a load of money away to festival this and festival that.
Oh.
But things like, taking the stables away, which you can't even see what they were going to do with that area that is the stables. With the stables, people used to love walking past and having those horses there. It was a kind of calming influence. Though actually Sarah may be coming back in the stables. They got rid of the stables. They kind of got all these grandiose plans for redeveloping everything. Just what we want is gradual change in due course.
Yeah. So those kind of vaults under the railway behind there, the plans to turn those into...
No, they look great to me. I don't understand why nothing's happening there.
Yeah, because I think broadly speaking, there's plans to turn those into sort of workshops or start-up spaces for community. Do you think there's
there's supposed to be some other hub, isn't there, at the back of it, which on the Freston Road side, which doesn't appear. That was supposed to open on the 30th of May or something like that. That still hasn't opened.
Yeah.
I don't really know what they're doing there. I mean, I thought the idea was, if you're going to have some flagship retail outlet, you usually book them in before you built the building, but they can't even get a Tesco's Express in there. Not that we want a Tesco's Express, but there are all those garages available. I imagine that they won't be able to sell them as kind of mechanics garages because they'll be too noisy for the residents.
Right, yeah.
The tyranny of the noise restriction laws. So I don't see, they haven't even sold all the flats as far as I can see.
Yeah.
But but people's lives have been impinged upon.
Do you think if those become actually accessible spaces that can be used by the community, does that sort of make up for the general process of building all of these? That's a bit of a silly question, I guess.
Yeah, maybe. It's difficult to tell. On the other hand, they're trying to get rid of the college in Goulburn Road, Worthington Road, which is where people might learn a skill that they might then want to take on into a startup. So I don't quite know who these people who are looking for startup spaces are.
Yeah.
I don't know if they think we're suddenly going to become the old street roundabout or. I know in our plans, I don't know if it's our plans actually or the local plan for the area, but in the local plan for the area, they did see they seem to see a small kind of biotech industry growing up round kind of Preston Road. Because you've got the Imperial College campus being built on the other side of the railway line.
Yeah.
And in theory, there's going to be a tunnel underneath the railway line, or a bridge over it, whatever. Tunnel under it, I think. Which is, do you know what an S106 is?
No.
S106 is when you build something, an S106 payment is payments either in lieu of building social housing or in order to improve the infrastructure of the area. But part of the S106 for the Imperial College campus is this tunnel underneath the railway line. And I think they saw us as a bit of a dormitory for that. So there'll be loads of coffee shops all the way up and down these new boulevards they're going to build, where people would sip coffee and talk about, their biotech ideas before starting up in Preston Road, as they left. So,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
What do you think that the community needs in terms of investment?
Well, the most basic investment is proper maintenance of the buildings. I mean, Tany's just been in Charing Cross Hospital, and in Charing Cross Hospital you can see that the lifts are being renewed or replaced or properly maintained in a way that seems to be, broadly speaking, planned.
Yeah. Whereas
here, the way they deal with the lifts is they call in the lift guy when it breaks down, and it takes however long to fix, then it breaks down a couple of weeks later. There's no kind of one lift's out of order for a month or two while they completely rejig it and then they move to the other lift.
Yeah.
Which is, what about cleaning the buildings? If you go up the towers, there's fucking pigeon shit like you wouldn't believe encrusted on the outside of the windows. Particularly there's a bit in Whitstable where Peaky and his mates all sit on the stairs smoking pot all night. And that, for instance, I'm sure he just stares at the pigeon shit out there. People need... it's basically the normal cyclical repairs which are being pushed down the... Hi, look, come on in. So I'm just talking to someone here, but would you like to... Yes, I'm going to say so where did we get to there? Cyclical maintenance. Yeah. No, I've just put in a follow. They were supposed to reply to me today. I put in an FOI request asking to be given the details of the expenditure in Sichester versus the income from Sichester over the last 6 years.
Right.
This was partly inspired by someone who did the same thing for Grenfell Tower. In Grenfell Tower, cyclical repairs cost 110 grand, and the income from the estate was 720 grand.
Right. Yeah.
So they're making massive profits on these properties, and yet they manage decline. The theory from our side is that they deliberately don't keep the estate up. So it's in a state of managed decline till it gets to the point of no return, at which point they say, we've got to knock it all down.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is a massive conspiracy theory. I think it's broadly speaking what's happening.
Well, no, I mean, like, particularly those figures really point towards that. Yeah. I guess that sort of already answers my second question, which was like, is the existing estate in a state of disrepair?
Yeah, but it's not beyond the wit of man to do something about it. I mean, for instance, this area is prone to subsidence,
right?
Because we're the poor people in the clay side of the hill, which is why you had the piggeries and the potteries down in proper Nottingdale down there. So these 6 houses have a 12-inch reinforced concrete raft underneath them. So the only way that if this house was to subside, the house at the end of the terrace would start going up.
Yeah.
They're incredibly well built, these houses. People come in here and admittedly that's not how the original house was. This would have been I think a couple of rooms rather than one room.
Yeah.
But they're really well built. They ain't going to fall down.
Yeah.
Those towers aren't going to fall down. You look up there, you can see the concrete tower that existed before is still standing, even though the temperature apparently went up to 1600 fucking degrees centigrade.
Yeah.
These things are built properly, and if you just maintain them, they will remain gorgeous.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the, you could say there are issues with the fact that we've got to 35 years later and some of the wrong people are living in the wrong flats. So there are people who don't walk so well on upper floors because they've been there for 30 years and they walked fine when they moved in. But a lot of people would actually rather stay. I think it came out of Grenfell, there were people who actually loved their flat on the 16th floor.
Yeah.
They'd lived there for 35 years. They didn't want the disruption of moving to a more convenient flat. But Trellick Tower, people are biting your arm off to buy one of the upper floors in Trellick Tower.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you do. Maybe you sell the top 6 floors off to yuppies and use that to make some new council houses on the ground floor for people with bad legs. I don't know what you do, but the way they're doing it now is not.
Do you think that this community would be able to organise itself to guide the regeneration itself? I suppose of some of these kind of people's plans and stuff.
That is interesting. We had the special circumstances of Grenfell Tower, but we were winning before Grenfell. The tide had turned. I have been round to not to other estates. I go to these demolition watch meetings where we meet people from all round London. From Cressy, from Haringey, from Aylesbury, from Haygate, from all these other famous places, and they don't appear to be anywhere near as strong or unified as us. We, by dint of the fact that our residents' association always represented leaseholders and tenants, and by dint of the fact that we kept the whole thing very binary. Do you want your house knocked down? Yes or no?
Yeah.
We kept fantastic unity and focus of purpose the whole way through our campaign.
Yeah.
I think it's possible. It's possible that does fracture when you have to move to the positive side of things.
Yeah.
I mean, I love brutalist architecture, but I happen to know that some of the people that I was encouraging to fight the destruction of the brutalist architecture were not necessarily as enamoured of the place as I am.
Yeah.
They didn't want either to be kicked out, or it's just the disruption it would take to do the rest of this estate. If they banged out in double quick time, is 15 years. That's 15 years of skip trucks, 15 years of the noise of drilling, 15 years of dust everywhere, 15 years the roads being dangerous. It's the disruption is beyond belief.
Yeah.
So whether you could switch that round and turn it into a positive, let's build this together, I don't know. I mean, I like to think so. And in fact, this is one of the issues at the moment. There's a big thing going on with, who the TMO are? The TMO, the Arm's Length Tenant Management Organisation,
right,
which was originally actually quite heavily dominated by tenants. That's in the mid-80s when it was started, or 90s, whenever it was started. And has basically been taken over by a combination of council puppets, and you have this thing where the organisation which started, to work on residents' behalf somehow becomes a self-serving institution. That is being disbanded because they were responsible for Grenfell Tower. And at the moment, the plan is to disband it and hand all the properties back to the council for them to manage as they see fit. Now, those of us who are concerned about the future management of the council housing in RBKC are really worried about that, and that we think that needs to have more consultation before we just hand it back. Because one of the things we'd like to look at on this estate is whether we can start our own TMO, which really is the tenants managing the estate. I have no idea what that would take in terms of expertise, time, money, or what. And obviously if you are actually running the budget, you do have difficult decisions to make. Should we pay for more flowers, or should we pay for more light bulbs? Whatever the decision is. But I would that's a long-winded way of saying I would like to think so. Having said that, there's a kind of outbreak of egomania going on. There's so many different organisations around here that people are kind of jockeying for position, and I don't enjoy particularly being an activist. I'm outcome orientated. The outcome I wanted was, first of all, not for my own house, and then for the rest of the estate, not to be knocked down. We seem to got, there is, I don't know how much it's to do with the fact there's like all this fucking Grenfell money now that everyone wants a bit of, or whether suddenly organisations are being listened to. For a lot of people, particularly Ed Daffon and the Grenfell Action Group up there, for a lot of people, they've been screaming into the abyss for years, and now they're getting TV cameras stuck under their noses and stuff like that. So it's difficult to know what the reason is, but that whole unity of purpose is slightly dissipating. And I don't know whether the minute you set up an organisation, its trajectory is going to be towards a self-serving institution. Whatever you do, maybe that's just the way shit happens.
Power corrupts.
That's the word I was looking for, the phrase I was looking for.
Do you think, what sort of decisions in that respect do you think should rest with the residents, and what role should an architect have in that context, do you think? Or are there things that could be shared between them, and what would be entirely the remit of one as opposed to just the other?
Well, if you look at Apple, where Steve Jobs, though this became a self-serving fucking organisation too, Steve Jobs was able to design things that you wouldn't have asked for.
Yeah.
You know, he knew human wants and needs, and he knew what he could make a computer do, and he was able to create things that no focus group would ever have asked for.
Yeah.
And change our lives in many ways. I mean, I'd still like to think architects can do that. I'm, sadly wedded to the ideals of Corbusier, which is, in some ways, kind of a bit top down.
Yeah.
And, who knows how many people ever actually exercised on all those exercise sun decks he put in all over the place. But, they're, on the other hand, if you take something like the Unité in Marseille, that was built as a city in the sky. It kind of turned nasty for a while. But then once all the North Africans had moved in, now apparently there are souks on every corridor. And the residents have found a way of using that building for their own ends. I mean, people like Michael Clark, the ballet dancer, have a flat in there now.
Yeah.
So it's this participation thing. If they came to us and say we need to build some more homes, there are things we might have been able to do, together. No one would object to them building, for instance, Wainfleet Square, which is the big square. So I suppose I'll take some of that out of the way. Wainfleet Square, you could build another story, maybe two on top, and no one would object to that. These along here, which is... And where do I live? I'm here, right? So these along here, Darfield Way, they're these kind of two-storey... They look a bit like that motel where Martin Luther King was shot in Memphis. They're that two-storey with a balcony on the outside. But those homes apparently aren't as well built as some of the others. There's problems there.
Yeah.
Even if there aren't problems, they're only two-storey, they could probably go to four-storey. They could have come to us and said, where do you think you can add some properties here? And that would have been participation. We might, have all been at each other's throats. The Darfield Way, people saying, not on my fucking place.
Yeah.
And, if they... one of the reasons we were able to stop them is the fact that they didn't know that this is a freehold. And two doors down, George Clark, the architect off the telly, Amazing Spaces, restoration man,
right, okay.
He lives two doors down. I mean, he's been waiting to buy a house, one of these.
Yeah.
He's been waiting to pounce to buy one of these 6 houses for about 5 years. Because he loves them so much.
Yeah.
So
is that very smart with the one with the boarded out?
Yeah. And it's quite possible that the very fact, because getting rid of us was going to be that much more difficult, they couldn't knock down these 6 houses.
Yeah.
Which in some ways is the lowest density anywhere in the estate.
Yeah.
You've got Akavod. Because in the original, there was an original master plan from 2009, which I can also send you which was created when they built the school. But that's an art centre over there. You've got 6 houses with maybe 24 people living in them, and then you've got a wood yard. So if they'd been able to, Aqaba also saved itself because the Aqaba trustees are the great and the good who understand how to prowl the corridors of the town hall. But if they'd been able to get this bit here, you could have built, and this is actually explicit in the master plan from 2009. You would then be able to build enough housing here to decant people from the next place into. Yeah. And then whatever you did there, you decant the next people across. Yeah. So the fact they lost this row of 6 houses was kind of, I think, absolutely crucial to stopping them.
Yeah. But equally, that process of decanting could have happened with the project around Frinstead House, because that's an example of something that was under.
Yes, the only thing is that I think there was only enough social housing for the people who they actually displaced.
Oh, right.
And it was paid for by. The general rule is kind of 2/3 new, 1/3 old. So say there's 500 properties.
Yeah.
Well, they've now committed to at least replacing the 500, but the idea would have been basically to cut it down to 400 social and an extra 800 market.
Yeah.
Because unless you're a member of the Tory cabinet, affordable means market. You know, a 20% discount is kind of nothing when you're talking 800 grand.
Yeah.
Well, it is. It brings it down to 640, but you know, it still takes it out of the realms of
completely.
You know, the working man, as it were. Sorry, what was the question?
Could they have done that process of decanting and then redeveloping with that project?
I don't know where they did decant everyone to.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many people came back.
Because it strikes me as like one of the things, I know they've done this in, I can't remember the name of it, another estate in North London, where they've almost like you sort of preload the regeneration project. So what you do is you build the new houses, move the existing social tenants into those, then demolish their block and half build it with market property and half build it with social rent property, and that means that you're sort of bumping people up in terms of the regeneration, so that they've got like a nicer flat than they were in before, and then the ones that they were in are the ones that you're redeveloping, and that seems like a much better way round of doing it rather than starting with the luxury and then.
It's a fallacy that they're nicer flats that you move into. The space standards are much smaller now than they were.
Really?
So the amount of space that you're required to build for people is less.
Yeah.
The building standards are less rigorous, as we've seen. And the other thing is, if you look at Emma Dent Code, who's our local MP's blog, at the Worthington estate, you know, within 3 months of people being moved into, this is housing association rather than council, of people being moved into their new social housing on the Worthington estate, you know, the walls were bubbling up, someone's window fell out, you know, the building standards are much, much worse. So you might have a shinier flat, but it's not necessarily going to be a better flat.
Right, okay. I mean, yeah, it's quite striking that you say that, because there's this new thing about the mayor's sort of guide for for housing, basically housing standards, that is like a lot significantly more rigorous. So part of the reason why these new London vernacular places look the way they do is there's like minimum standards for balconies have to be 1.5 metres at least deep. Ceilings have to be 2.7 metres instead of 2.4, which is what they used to be. And things like that are now basically built into these are just the requirements for any new London house build.
Right. Okay. Even for social housing?
Yeah.
All right. Well, that stands in contrast to the prevailing opinion on our side, as it were.
Okay. Yeah.
That's only height though, but not space. Maybe a bit higher, but not.
Yeah.
Rooms are normally much smaller.
Yeah.
So 2.7 meters.
Yeah.
That is 14, 15 feet. That can't be right.
It's not 14, 15 feet. It's basically 30 centimeters taller than what this is.
Right. This is 2.4, do you think?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
But that's just... Anyway. Yeah. That is interesting that that's different from the prevailing opinion, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess that's what people...
But I mean, was it Barrett's have had to give a whole load of people loads of money back because their houses are badly built somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, I don't doubt that at all.
And that's and we now have a skills shortage.
Yeah.
You know, so that's only going to get worse.
Yeah. Would you? In what way would you like to see architects involved with the local residents if they were going to be building a project in an area?
Well, the architect who was involved in our regen thing, Porphyrius, did it completely wrong.
I can't believe that he's... I mean, I looked him up, and I can't believe that he was chosen to be in charge. He was the consultant for this.
He was the architect for the options appraisal process.
Right.
They said that he hadn't necessarily been booked for the full gig. But it seemed a bit weird to get someone else to work on the options appraisal and not be there for the gig.
Yeah. I mean, he's also he's a neoclassical architect. I mean, I looked at his website. It's like he does stuff for American colleges. That's really odd.
Yeah, I mean, it's their obsession with the kind of Georgian Victorian fabric of the rest of the borough.
Yeah.
But you know, those houses, to take the Garden Square concept, you know, those squares where we always used to bunk in when we were younger to go to all their parties. They don't even seem to have parties there anymore. They are all pretty much single occupancy, big family homes around a huge fucking square. The density there, you know, the density they built at Sichester garages is just it's too high for people to enjoy the same small little space. You know, once some kids are playing football, that's all the space gone. You know, it's whereas if you go up to Ladbroke Square or something, you know, you could have 8 games of football and still have a picnic. So
so you think that if they could have kept the same architect through from the appraisal process to the actual design, or it seems odd that they've chosen someone different? Bits, do you mean?
Well, we didn't. It's another thing we didn't believe. You know, we hated Porphyrius' stuff, and one of the great things that people kept saying about these new garden squares, as they would call them, is it basically looked like prison blocks around an exercise yard. You know, would we all be let out once an hour to shuffle around in the same direction? He didn't even seem to. His light projections were all wrong as well.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I can tell you that as we get further into the month, you know, till quite late in the morning, the light will come through the tube trains and flicker on our walls.
Yeah.
You know, so it means it's not going to get over a 5-story building all day.
Yeah.
That then put them in. They also had the trouble here with the Westway, because even as they were going through this process, the whole particulates debate was ramping up. Partly nationally, you know, halfway through it, we had that thing where NICE said that you should spend the day in the room away from the busy motorway that you live near. So both generally and also specifically with when Westway 23 started, one of the things they were really big on is the pollution coming off the Westway.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been brought up with pollution. I mean, I was brought up on Edith Grove, which is a trunk road in World's End, Chelsea, and I've moved here to where the Westway is. And as a cyclist, you know, I accept particulates, but I'm not an 8-year-old child. And you know, the Westway, I love the Westway because it means that we can cycle without being run down by fucking cars going 100 miles an hour. But yeah.
What was the like appraisal thing that Porphyrios put together? What was it?
Well, I mean, he's. You found one of those that was the first leaflet we produced. We became a more trusted source of information than the council, which was good. Oh no, what's this here? Yeah, there's the back of Wainfleet Square. Nice. Right. Where is... Here we go. Are those things he's actually done?
Yes. Yeah. Previous work.
He was incredibly arrogant. You know, when challenged about the fact we were going to lose Wainfleet Square, his answer was, "Well, you're lucky to have had it for so long." Yeah. Hi Joyce, how you doing?
Good, after work.
This is Nick and Theo.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting. So this is his proposition for...
Yeah.
Interesting. This is a total change of the entire street layout.
Yeah, well, that's another big thing that they're involved with Create Streets. They've got an obsession with the conservation areas of the future, which is another way of saying we hate council estates.
Yeah.
And they have this obsession with creating a traditional street pattern, which somehow makes people, I don't know what it makes people do, but, you know, one of the reasons for demolishing our whole estate was the impermeability. You know, basically there's a railway line up there.
Yeah.
You've got the Westway there. I don't know why that makes it impermeable, but we are backed up against we're backed up against the railway line that you can't cross.
Yeah.
You can't get to Notting Hill Gate from here without going on 2 buses.
Right.
So I don't know why our lives wouldn't be improved by getting a bus that went from here to Notting Hill Gate. But they thought the better idea was to knock everything down. And these are really disingenuous. These new, what are these yellow things?
Proposed pedestrian routes.
Existing, yeah. I don't understand. That exists. Yeah, that's a proposed one, is it? Yeah. You know, that still exists. You can still walk under the Westway there if you want to.
Yeah.
So the only thing that would be an improvement is that they do create, they'd create a way. The next street down Bletchington Street, where the car wash is, you can't get through.
Right.
But again, you don't have to knock down our estate.
Yeah.
To create an access point there. So.
Yeah. That's extraordinary. I just find it amazing that this is the guy that they chose to do their.
Yeah.
Well, I get it. It tells you a lot about. So did he do all of these options, or just some of them?
Well, yes. I mean, I assume the council had some input on his.
I guess it.
And the consultations had some input on it.
Yeah.
We just made sure, though, that the consultations were incredibly negative from their point of view. I mean, the main reason we won is we started very early. So there are all these stages they have to go through, and we were saying no at the very first stage.
Yeah.
So usually they kind of swing through, and quite often protest doesn't get started till planning permission has been granted, which is too late.
Yeah.
You know, they were still yonks off planning permission because they had no buy-in from the residents.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I guess it's also because this is a kind of way of framing. It's like, as a way of framing it, being like, you have 6 options. We've looked at so many different options. You know, surely one of these 6 should be good.
It's like Ariel or bowl.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
You've got a choice. What do you mean you don't want any washing powder at all?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And one of the things we really thought was this idea of the resident engagement panel, because we saw that as something that was going to decide the colour of the doors.
Yeah.
You know, we wanted to decide whether the house got knocked down.
Yeah. I guess it's also a case of, like, I mean, there are lots of architects who really work in this speciality, like this is what they do, and they've done projects similar to this in the past. So it seems curious that they didn't choose somebody like that, or even that, I guess, do you think it would be conceivable that the kind of community here would be able to, like, propose somebody to be like, actually we'd like this so-and-so to look at this project, rather than your architect, we want this one?
Right, we didn't try that. It's quite an interesting angle.
Yeah.
I suppose our next step would have been to see if we could get Simon or someone like that to produce a people's plan.
Yeah.
Um,
And that makes sense because he's
local,
I guess.
You know, the overwhelming sense though was that all the fucking Tories go to the Cotswolds along the Westway.
Yeah.
And the council's sick of people's first sight of RBKC being our 4 towers.
Yeah.
You know, they've now made it even worse. And the first sight is a burnt out tower.
Yeah.
But
God. Yeah. Yeah, so I guess it's basically purely aesthetic, to be honest. Like, when you look at that, you understand that really says it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. How much? Yeah, I was going to say, how much time do you think people are willing to or able to give to these sorts of things?
Well, I gave up pretty much my whole life. As I said, I'm lucky in that I work at night.
Yeah.
So I was able to push our agenda forward during the day. People don't have a lot of time. I mean, I tried to keep it really binary. Do you want your fucking home knocked down? And that people could get energised by that.
Yeah.
You know, it was a yes, no answer, and no was the answer in pretty much every case. Whether, you know, it's the same question we're going to have to ask ourselves when it comes to how do we want the estate to be managed going forward. And I wonder whether, you know, people's energy levels would drop. You know, it's. You would really have to engage people.
Yeah.
The thing is, of course, that we're talking, I think it was originally 6.3 hectares the original area they wanted to redevelop, and maybe that is too big a chunk for engagement by a community, and also it would involve, I can't remember how many. So we got 5, 9, 10. Yeah, so you've got about 16 different blocks there.
Yeah.
So would that involve would you have to have one representative from each block on there? Otherwise, why am I in Sichester Road putting my 10p's worth in about what should happen to Darfield Way and all that sort of thing? So I don't quite know. Yeah, just kind of where you expect it to be.
Do you feel like you can change what your built environment looks like?
Well, we have changed. We've prevented the change we didn't want, which is a negative answer.
Yeah.
And I'd like them to clean the towers. I think that would cheer everyone up massively.
Yeah.
I'm quite keen on the idea of under the Westway being a cycle superhighway. Though obviously you run into problems, the fact that the market runs along there on Saturdays certainly, and Fridays to a certain extent. One of our cries was, what do we want gradual change, when do we want it in due course? And I think, yes, if it was gradual change, there's a wood yard at the end of this terrace.
Yeah.
We wouldn't obviously object to them building some houses there. And I suppose we'd expect to have some input in a way on the design of that. It's my view that the ugliness around here, insofar as there is any, is created by the infill since the original estate was built. The original estate is anything that's in grey brick. So King's North House, which is the 2-storey one over there, Whitstable, Dixon and Markland and Frinstead Towers, these houses, Wainfleet Square. It's my view that I can't remember who it is it L&Q, but the building over the road, which replaced the notorious Notting Barnes pub, is ugly as sin. That kind of slight orange brick thing running along Bramley Road opposite Bramley House. Bramley House is beautiful. Is ugly as sin. Goodrich Court, which is on the opposite corner to Bramley House, which is that kind of wedding cakey thing, is ugly as sin. But I know there are people who would have a completely opposite view to me.
Yeah.
Not everyone loves brutalism.
Yeah. I think that's a good point about things being in due course, and also the scale of the change, because you can galvanise opinion about something that's very local and small, and bit by bit. But when it's on that scale, it's like almost too big to be able to comprehend, or even get any kind of consensus, I guess.
No, it took a long time for anyone to believe. Oh, we're not involved. We're not part of that. Yes, you are. They want to knock the whole fucking place down.
Yeah.
And it was, essentially, it was their incompetence. Because this bit here, which is Westway Trust land, Rockfielding Mellon, the wicked developer who we hope will go to jail as a result of Grenfell, Rockfielding Mellon didn't bother to make a courtesy call to the Westway Trust to say we're including your land as part of our regeneration proposals. So they had opposition from there quite early on, as that institution tried to preserve itself, not lose an acre and a half. And it was ill-conceived, but it's quite possible if someone who wasn't quite such a numpty as Rockfielding Mellon had come for us and been more inclusive. They weren't expecting someone to find someone like me on this day who was going to be quite so energised by the potential loss. I think they thought that essentially it was a passive group here who could be cajoled and corralled into doing what the council wanted. But the council estates nowadays are mixed tenure enough, so wherever you go to knock something down, you're going to find someone like me who is going to put enough energy into it. Our first meeting, which we had in the residence rooms, which are big enough for 60 or 70 people, attracted 200 people. So we had momentum from the off. We then had 3 more meetings, again, each with 200 people, with people, with Eileen Short from Defend Council Housing.
Are these meetings?
Yeah. And there were some after that as well. Simon Elmer came, Tony Bird came, all sorts of people came to tell us how their estates have been knocked down. And now I'm being asked, to go to Church Street or to go to Cressingham Gardens or to the Labour Party conference to tell the story, which I obviously lard up a tiny bit, of how we won. So hopefully it's going to become more difficult for people just to swing in from their whatever town hall they come from and say, we're knocking you down. I don't know if there's a way to stop them selling all the fucking properties overseas, because we would have been more difficult for us to fight them if people didn't know that quite so many properties would be sold overseas. At the Haygate estate, in their first tranche which is Elephant and Castle, the first tranche of properties that have been sold, not a single one has been sold to someone from this country. So Giles Fraser, the guy who used to curate, the guy who used to be at St Paul's during Occupy and then had to leave, he's now a parish priest, and the Haygate is his parish, and he says it's very difficult to be a parish priest when all your parishioners live in China. And some quite good Guardian article he's written.
So I suppose, given the kind of pressures on time and money for everybody, what things, I guess maybe we've already covered that with the maintenance, but what things do you consider to be essential for the...
Well, going back to Porphyrius for a minute, at no point did Porphyrius appear to engage with people as to what they wanted before his plans were delivered. But like I said, he was an arrogant, unpleasant man who saw residents as an impediment to creating his vision. I don't know who that could possibly work on.
Hey, but Le Corbusier was like that as well.
Yeah, quite possibly. Quite possibly. And you got to remember that, the Boundary Estate in E2, Arnold Circus.
I don't know.
It was the first council estate. It's kind of just it's a bit north of Shoreditch. It's what used to be the old Nickel, which was a famous slum in the 19th century. They built the Boundary Estate, which is a gorgeous red brick things around a circus, which has got a kind of little bandstand on it. And 20 years ago that was quite decrepit. But anyway, when they built that in 1900, they basically evicted the undeserving poor.
Yeah.
And they brought in the deserving poor.
Yeah.
And I read the other day that of the 5,719 original residents, only 11 were offered new homes on the Boundary Estate.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean that was 1900, but
yeah,
there's a very, very good book that Simon Elmer again has been involved in one bit. Tim, what's your email address? I'll send you.
Theo Shack, one word. At live.co.uk. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, well, let me just send you Taxi Sichester PDF. I sent this to myself the other day. What was it? Yeah, it's I got a lot of this, what I just said to you about the Boundary Estate, out this thing which I'm just going to come up with. Piers. Yeah, they do the Boundary Estate, Ashington House, the Ocean Estate, Balfron Tower, Robin Hood Gardens and the Ocean Estate. Anyway, it's fascinating stuff. Okay, I'm going to send you an email and copy in Nahid and Michael. Where did you say you were? Edinburgh?
Yeah.
I mean, Michael will be way more disparaging about Porphyrius. No, architecture. Cool.
There's just like a couple more questions.
Yeah, go
on. So do you feel like the architects or the council understand the community and its requirements and hopes?
Do you need any more?
No, I think we've got enough on that. Do you feel like the architects are on your side or any side?